Was nobody registered for public comment?
Hey, what's the
Yeah, I see.
Wi-Fi password?
Should be able to share it with you.
Welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council meeting. It is our workshop, and it is July the 9th, 11:30. If you'll bow with me, and if you'll, after the prayer, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, thank you for this day. I thank you for each person that's sitting at this table, for the guidance they provide, for their dedication. Lord, I thank you for the blessings you've given this city and that you continue to give this city. Lord, let our ears be open and our eyes be open to make the best decisions for our city. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move into action items. Item 1, change order number 3 for housing rehabilitation, 519 East State Street. Mr. Holtz.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Item before you, as the mayor said, is change order number 3 for a rehabilitation project we're completing at 519 East State Street. The total amount is $3,625. Recommend approval.
Any questions for Mr. Holtz?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade. Mr. Wright. Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, let's move to item 2, Scales Elementary School restoration notice of award. Mr. Hennessy.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present this item. The existing EPDM roof on Scales Elementary was installed in 2005 and is reaching the end of its useful life. Utilizing a fluid-applied membrane will extend the life of the roof by 20 years for roughly a third of the cost of a traditional EPDM tear-off and replacement. This project will consist of pressure washing the roof, repairing seam separations, replacement of moisture-damaged sections, and applying approximately 135,000 square feet of fluid-applied membrane to cover the entire roof. The project was competitively bid and is pending legal approval of the contract and payment and performance bonds. Escola LLC was the lowest responsive bidder in the amount of $718,788. This project's funded by the City Schools CIP. Be glad to answer any questions that you have.
If no questions, I move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Let's move to item 3, ordinance 26022, fiscal year 27 tax rate. This is second and final reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris. Mr. Maxwell. Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Ordinance 260Z23, the PRD zoning amendment for property along Oak Green Cove at RT Johnson Drive. This is second and final reading.
So moved.
Second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright. Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Ordinance 260Z24, zoning for property along Halls Hill Pike. This is second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Ordinance 260Z25, rezoning for property along Cason Lane. This is second and final reading.
So moved.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater. Aye. Ms. Gills Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, item 7, resolution 26R30, resolution of support and acknowledgement of amended design guidelines and standards document. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate you letting me present this today. This is the design guidelines and standards update. If you'll remember, we've brought this to you January 7th for a joint conceptual workshop. We got a lot of good feedback on that. We incorporated that feedback, came back, joint conceptual workshop June 3rd, represented that time, and then we took this to adoption to the Planning Commission after that, July 1st, after a public hearing. These guidelines were originally adopted in 2017 by the Planning Commission and then this would be the first comprehensive update since that time. Over the last several years, staff has looked to really pull together some standards that we think needed updating, needed review. We pulled that together with a stakeholder group. The stakeholder group was made up of a residential builder, industrial development builder, 2 civil engineers, and an architect. So a really good, diverse stakeholder group that do a lot of work here in Murfreesboro. So we had 9 meetings starting March 2025, and we met about things like materials updates, open space, formal open space, refining what that looks like, evaluating where we can look at flexibility while still maintaining the high standards of development and design that we want to see in the city of Murfreesboro. So overall, a good collaborative effort. We've had good stakeholder engagement. We had public hearing on these. We had good staff engagement, and would like to thank staff for their time and their thoughtfulness in this. I'd like to thank our stakeholders who gave a lot of their time. And these were 2-hour meetings that we would hold, and having those 9 different times is a lot to give to the city to make it better for where they do business and where they live. So we appreciate that. We also appreciate Pape Dawson for helping us coordinate these meetings and the stakeholder engagement, and then helping us put all this together in a deliverable that is meaningful and impactful for the city. So I'll let Kevin Gunther from Pape Dawson really dive into a little bit deeper of what some of these changes are. And then we're asking for a resolution of support since the Planning Commission has adopted these already.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Thank you, Mr. Newman. I'll keep this brief, but certainly am open to engaging in any discussions that any of you might like to have. I know most of you have seen this information before. I think we're at a great point where we are actually now adopting this and integrating this into guiding document for the city. We're very pleased to be able to do that. Just very briefly, some of the key updates that Mr. Newman had touched on. Of course, we went through the whole document, cleaned up language, made sure there was some clarity given to the document where staff had been wrestling with some issues that they had when they used it. Formal open space was looked at very thoroughly, and there is now a option for enhanced landscape if formal open space doesn't make sense. A lot of look at architectural elements specifically related to composition, materials, and colors. And then just because it was something specifically brought up with city leadership, we looked at specific requirements for gas pump canopies and some discussions on overall color language. As I mentioned, the formal open space was a big part of the discussion, mainly because we wanted to make sure this document captured what was needed. What are we trying to achieve? We realized in some cases formal open space really didn't make sense for certain businesses or land use or programs for a building. So we looked at that and actually went through the entire zoning codification document to see where the different land uses might apply to formal open space. There was also specific changes related to multifamily and townhomes, and then also other housing items such as assisted care and hotel were included in the formal open space discussion. The main takeaway is there is now a chart within the design guidelines that can very specifically gear staff and developers on how to use the formal open space and whether it's really needed for a particular site. Related to commercial space, anything over 5 acres or 40,000 square feet will continue to have a requirement for open space if it is also paired with the land use requirement in the chart. Anything under a half acre is exempt, and all industrial uses are exempt. There is still an active area requirement for residential developments. That's specifically related to things like picnic areas, boardwalks, and trails. We did allow for the surrounding buffers for wetlands to be considered as possible active area uses, because we recognize that if that was developed in the right way, it would still achieve some of the same goals. This is a diagram that depicts how the enhanced landscape option can be used. We wanted to make sure to include this in addition to the text language, because sometimes a picture does tell you 1,000 words. So it's showing how you can apply that enhanced landscape to the front of a building, to the entrance of a building, or an access drive approaching the building. As far as architecture, as I mentioned, there was a lot of discussion about materials, making sure that any new materials, like a lot of the metals that are being used now, could be applied where there was quality to them, and how they were applied in a way that made sure there was some interest in the front facades of buildings, where you have not just one metal application to the whole front facade, but you have variations of color or textures. And then gas station canopies, we realized there was an image in the old design guidelines that kind of suggested one particular type of canopy that was needed. We realized that really the intent is to make sure that we either have a pitch roof on that canopy, or there's some kind of architectural interest around the edge of that canopy, just so that it doesn't just become, one flat surface you can see from the public view. On color, we did want to clarify that white is not considered a bright or vibrant color, as we do suggest that in the primary color selection, we don't want bright and vibrant colors. We want to make sure to point out that there's a whole list of secondary and tertiary colors that can have vibrancy. This really gives you a full range of up to 9 different colors you could apply to a building. We feel like that there's good flexibility there, but also good direction on general color selection. And as I mentioned, we added some images on the canopy roof for car washes, for gas pumps, just so it was clear that it didn't have to be one particular type of roof. As I mentioned, material for metal panels is specified as allowable, but we also give some specification requirements and require some contrast if that metal is used on building facades. And then we also provided some additional secondary and tertiary materials like wood, plastics, or cementitious trim. There again, as long as there's a quality that's achieved for the material. Those are newer materials that are now being used that we felt should be included as material options. Industrial, we really didn't want to create guidelines that encumber the industrial approach too much, but we did want some interest to be added to the fronts of building facades. Where we landed was that for a facade facing a public roadway, you have to have 200-foot increments of some kind of building material change or color change. And then for buildings that are more than 200 feet, at least 3 distinct sections. And then also the clarity that if there's a building entrance on an industrial building, that should be highlighted in a clear and visible way that everybody sees that as an entrance, and that when there's office or showrooms applied to industrial space, there would be windows applied for those particular areas in the building. Townhomes now have their own distinct category within the design guidelines for both architectural and materials. And we are really at the very end of this process as far as next steps. We did get a chance to have a public hearing on this. Planning Commission did adopt this as a guiding document, and we are here today to consider that there would be a resolution of support from City Council. I'm happy to dive into any details or questions if you have them.
Do our Planning Commission members have any comments?
If we did, we said them the first 3 times that we saw this.
I'll offer as a council member, I feel like they did not work in a vacuum. They pulled in people from the outside, designers, builders, and so I think it's a really good product.
I would probably put on our city timeline that instead of reviewing this I think you said it was 2016, is that when we?
17.
Right. So, we're almost 10 years. This probably needs to be reevaluated every, couple of years, or maybe every year that the group gets back together and says, hey, are there any things that we're seeing come across? Are there any industry standards that have changed, new materials that are out there, and that way we're not playing catch up on everything.
And we totally agree with that. Our plan is to meet quarterly going forward, and we actually met this week already on some additional items that we're just taking a look at. So part of that was the lighting that we'll present here,
Yeah.
just a couple of items, but that is our goal, is to just continue to meet so that when we run into maybe new materials or conflicts that need to be sorted out, we can take care of those more quickly and not have such a lag in the future.
That's perfect. Thank y'all for your hard work on this. Last question I have. You've heard me talk about this before. So the Planning Commission, y'all have already voted on this, right? So what would happen if the council said, we want to see changes to this? So is that by statute that the Planning Commission has to vote on that, then council votes on it?
Yes, because council has designated the Planning Commission as the design review authority, they have final say, but certainly it would be a suggestion that Planning Commission could consider. But the Planning Commission for the design guidelines is kind of the final stop of the requirements to adopt changes.
I mean, I know we've talked about this, and I respect the Planning Commission, although there's only 2 elected people are on the Planning Commission. This is clearly a policy directive that the design guidelines are something that the City Council is saying from policy, this is what we would like to see. I don't want us to get into a situation that other governing bodies have had on studies where one group disagrees and the other group agrees, and the governing body has to ask the unelected body, hey, this is what we would like to see, and the other non-elected body says, well, we don't agree with that. So I would like us to see how policy decisions like this are approved at the elected level first and then sent down to the Planning Commission. I don't know if we legally can do that.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean, the reason I say that, like the land use plan, the design guidelines, those are major decisions for the city of Murfreesboro that when this council is long gone, you would want to make sure that the elected body is the one that is driving that decision and not 2 elected officials and 5 non-elected officials.
So there seems to me there are at least 2 different possibilities. One is the reason why the Planning Commission is the one that approved this is because council delegated the design review authority to Planning Commission. Council certainly could change that delegation and make it a different body or something else. That would be something we could look into. Another possibility is I don't think there's any requirement that this presentation to City Council for the resolution report has to come after Planning Commission has adopted the guidelines. It's possible that it could come to City Council first. That way you're able to give your input, and then it goes to Planning Commission to then consider that input. That would be another possibility, is just to change that timing.
I have no issue with the Planning Commission, but we've seen this in other areas where policy decisions need to be decided by the elected body, not by an appointed body. And when those lines blur, you can see issues. So maybe come back with a couple of recommendations to the council on what we could look at. And again, we don't need to be getting involved in site plans and those things, but true policy decisions like land use, design guidelines, that needs to be, in my opinion, driven by the elected body, sent down to the non-elected, the committee or commission level, and then if they want to make some changes or suggestions, that can come back to the overall body.
Yeah, my only real comment is the joint conceptual workshop, at least with the Planning Commission. If there's other policy level documents that come to that board, we may need to, we could set the process under which, how council could be the first adopter or the first recommendation body before it moved through to say the Planning Commission. But yeah, we will definitely work through that.
All right. Do we have a motion for adoption of the acknowledgement of amended support, or a resolution of support?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Thank you all for your hard work on that. I know that's taken a while. All right, you have some CIP transfers. Any questions on those CIP transfers? Any questions on the Public Records Request Annual Report for fiscal year 26? All right, let's talk about amendments to lighting standards.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This item is we're presenting to you to get some feedback on some changes that we're looking to make on the lighting standards that we have. Over the last years, staff has encountered a growing number of questions, requests that relate to exterior building and site lighting that doesn't necessarily fit into what our standards currently are. As lighting technology has advanced, the cost of installation has decreased, new products have become widely available, and businesses are incorporating lighting into their projects in ways that weren't really anticipated when we started or when we adopted our lighting standards. We really need to take a look at these, update them, modernize what our lighting standards are. Also, our lighting regulations are divided between sign ordinance and zoning, and so there's a little bit of disconnect of when lighting comes through, when it gets approved. So what we're looking to do is really take that out of two areas and put it into zoning so that we can get a handle and set clear expectations of what developers do when their lighting gets approved, so that we can not have the conflicts. What happens is these conflicts arise as a building's getting close to completion on construction. There are delays, there are additional costs, and all of that is not a pleasant experience when we have developers trying to get to the end of their project and get their CO. So we want to pull some of that forward, get that into the review process, site plan, and make sure people do have a clear understanding of what's allowed, what's expected. And then allow things that haven't been allowed due to our just outdated lighting standards. So John Tully, Assistant City Attorney, has been working with planning and codes to really draft something that pulls those two areas together so that it is in one area. And so John will do a presentation now and present a little bit of what we're looking at and the type of feedback that we're looking for.
Thank you and good morning. So as Mr. Newman alluded to, the goal here is primarily to bring the lighting standards into one place so that they're more unified and more consistent, and also to bring them earlier on in the process. The other benefit that I will add to what Mr. Newman said that staff believes will flow from this is by having it part of the plans review process, this will encourage the sort of one-stop shop of the plan department for developers, where they're the primary person they're working with through most of the process. With regard to what we are asking today, it's really just to have a conversation with council. There have been multiple staff meetings between planning, building, codes, development services, and myself and the legal department about how best to tackle this. But really, we don't want to go too far down that road until we know what the vision of council is and whether there are any different things that you'd like us to consider, or if we're going down a rabbit hole that we don't need to be going down. I'm going to be going through certain lighting categories we've identified that many of them are not currently spelled out in the sign ordinances. These will be new ways in order to treat these different categories of lighting, largely in response to these new lighting technologies where the barrier of entry is much lower than it has been since these lighting categories were first passed. So we'll get into those categories. The question will be whether those categories are appropriate, if there are other categories we should be considering, and then also whether we should be treating certain categories differently in different building overlay or zoning districts. So for example, in the Gateway District, we want only white lighting versus colored lighting, or only a certain number of colors. And this does kind of piggyback with that design guidelines that we just discussed. There has been a suggestion of staff that perhaps we, in addition to passing this ordinance amendment that will move lighting into the zoning ordinance, we also treat lighting in the design guidelines, at least with regard to colors. So that would be something for council to consider, and then any other direction that you may have. So if I may, I'll go through the categories we've identified. The first one is accent lighting. This is lighting that's used to wash a wall surface or a building facade. Example would be facade washing, column lighting, architectural uplighting. You'll see some examples here where there's uplighting along the building facades and architectural features. Our proposal for treating this type of accent lighting is that it will be allowed as an architectural feature, but must be aimed at the building rather than toward the public, so it won't be towards the streets or towards pedestrians. And lighting will be reviewed to ensure that it enhances the building without creating excessive glare or spill onto neighboring properties. The next category is outline lighting. These are strips of lights along a roof line typically or other architectural features used to define those edges or the architectural form. And again, the goal here would be to allow it in the ordinance to trace those building features and roof lines, but it must have a consistent color and intensity, not be blinking or flashing, and certainly we'll be making sure that it can't function as a digital display as kind of an end run around the sign ordinance. And then a very related category to that is strip lighting. At least that's what we're calling it, which is similar to outline lighting, but this is specifically along a roof line and it's individual bulbs as opposed to strips of fluorescent or LED tubing. And the idea here is this would be allowed only along roof lines, but it must appear neat and permanent. Specifically, we're addressing, there have been some examples where there's been exposed wiring, particularly like extension cords going up to the roof, which doesn't look great, so we want it to be a more permanent installation if it is allowed along the roof line. So that's our proposal. Staff's proposal. The next is, again, similar. This is patio string lighting, so the same kind of individual bulbs along a string, but this would be only in gathering spaces or outdoor eating areas. And the suggestion here is that it will be allowed in those outdoor dining or gathering areas where it serves as low-intensity ambient lighting, which is different than general illumination for safety. This is just for ambiance. The standards that staff is proposing is to maintain a warm, inviting atmosphere and not have it be excessively bright or glaring, and not to affect nearby properties either. So there will be different screening requirements, perhaps, if there's a residential property nearby or something along those lines. The next example is general illumination. This is already addressed in both, I believe, the zoning ordinance and the signed ordinance. And so we're not changing much here. This is really for safety in parking lots, walkways, building mounted lighting. So we're not changing much. The main focus here would be directing light where it's needed while minimizing glare and light trespass onto adjacent properties and public right-of-way. The next category then is decorative street lighting. So you can see some examples here from the fountains. This is placemaking and ambiance in public spaces. The proposal here is because this is at least defined as within the public right-of-way, it would only be allowed with a permit from the city because they'd be placing lights along or in public property. And so I guess the question is whether we want to allow that at all, or if we do we want to treat it differently in certain zoning districts? So, for example, have it be allowed in the central business district around the square, but not elsewhere. That would be a possibility. One thing I should note here, though, as you can see, these look like holiday lights. This lighting category is only for more permanent displays. Temporary holiday lighting is still going to be allowed, within several weeks on either end of certain holidays. So this would not prohibit those. Although I guess if someone wanted to put holiday lights in the right-of-way, they would still have to get some city approval for that. So that was a very brief overlay of those categories. I'm happy to go back to any of them if you'd like to take a look at those pictures. But really, the goal is to see what council thinks. The general approach that we're proposing for all of this lighting is to move it as part of the site design process, the site plan review process, where the developers will be able to provide architectural renderings and site plans showing where the lights will be, what color they'll be, so that it'll be easy for planning commission and city council to see what the lighting is going to look like at nighttime. The goal here, of course, is to have it be earlier on in the process. So if there are any changes, it'll be easier for the developers to incorporate those rather than when they get farther down the road, as is currently the case. Also, the hope is to reduce confusion by having it be part of the process they're already going through with the planning department. And of course, to provide clear expectations for developers. So just to reiterate some of the questions that we're asking directly is, do we want different standards in different districts? Do we want regulation of lighting in the design guidelines or not? Should site plans include architectural renderings or just a site plan? Any other suggestions you may have? So with that, I know that was a very kind of quick review. I'm happy to go back to anything you have or answer any questions, but please let me know your thoughts.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the second set of strip lights, can they be in color?
I'm sorry?
Be in color, or do they need to be just the light bulbs color?
I believe what we have been looking at is for strip lighting along the roof line, it would be only allowed as white. If they wanted colored, then it would be outline lighting. But that doesn't have to be the case, certainly.
And in a case like the roof line, and you talked about the lights, for instance, holidays.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. So the ordinance currently provides, I believe, or certainly the ordinance that I've drafted provides that any temporary holiday lights, I think the date we looked at was from November 15th through January 15th, but you can pick a different date. Any lighting within that time period, temporary holiday lights would be permitted. This is the only outside of those dates. If you want to have those types of individual bulbs on a string, then it would be either the street lighting or string lighting or strip lighting.
So when you say holiday, first thing comes to my mind is Thanksgiving and Christmas. What about 4th of July or something like that? Would that be considered a holiday?
We certainly could. Yes, ma'am. I believe currently the ordinance is drafted just for the winter holidays, but there's no reason why we couldn't allow several weeks on either end of 4th of July or any other holidays.
In the same criteria?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And we could add, St. Patrick's Day, or if you want to do Halloween,
And last question, at any time will blinking lights be okay?
I don't believe so. I believe under all these standards, it's only lights of constant intensity, and that they have to be the same color. We don't want multiple, kind of rainbow lights necessarily. Although if you have a developer doing, for example, outline lighting with different architectural features, you could have one color for one feature, one color for a different feature under the current standards. But if we wanted to address this in the design guidelines, we could limit that as well.
See a holiday, something like Christmas or somebody that may request that the lights blink.
Right. And so actually, I believe right now those temporary holiday lights, we do not address the blinking lights. I think it's silent as to whether you can or cannot have blinking lights. And so we certainly could either expressly allow them or expressly prohibit if we wanted to.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How are we handling it now? I mean, how are we handling light?
Right now, the lighting regulation, Ms. Stevens can speak more to this. It's part of the lighting regulation is predominantly in the sign ordinance, which has caused some confusion because lighting certainly can function as a sign. Imagine if you have a brand that has strong coloring and they have those colors as their nighttime lights, that could act potentially as a sign. But I think most of staff believes that it's a bit farther than we want to go to treat those fully as signs. And so the proposal here would be to, for any lighting other than lighting that's directly illuminating a sign under the sign ordinance, it would be treated separately under the zoning ordinance. But currently, it's all in the sign ordinance. If you want to speak more to that.
Yes, currently, this type of lighting that you see here is not allowed in any of the gateway overlays. Also, the only color it is allowed in other areas, if it's strip lighting, this is where it gets confusing. There's two different types of lights. They're basically the same. Strip lighting is defined as going under an eave, kind of like this the sign here on my right, or your right. And then we also have outline lighting, which is a constant tube. Outline lighting can be different colors. Strip lighting has to be white. That's a lot of confusion comes in that. Also, because some of it's allowed in Gateway, some of it's not allowed in other areas, that can become quite confusing for people. The technology is such that the lights can change simply by an app. You can install these lights and have 3 different colors illuminating on your building. That's a lot of the issues we're running into. And like I said, early in the development, a lot of developers are have the idea of having these in their plans, but it's not asked for early on. So we're trying to resolve that issue.
So it's handled under the sign ordinance presently? Or?
Currently, yes.
Okay. I know there was a time when we had the tobacco shops and they had the lights around it, and we addressed it. Are there particular problems that we're seeing now with lighting where there's an issue that we need to address it according to an ordinance, or are we just trying to be proactive?
Well, we're trying to be proactive, but there are issues that do come up on occasion, especially with older developments where people want to enhance their building and draw attention to it. They're not getting permits, they're not asking. So we just want to make it clear on the front end when you are allowed to have it, when you're not allowed. Obviously, window lighting is a completely different issue. That's going to remain in the sign ordinance as a violation. So we'll try to continue to enforce that through the sign ordinance. This is more about development, architectural features, how it makes the building appear. You can tell all these pictures are local. We typically don't do that, but we just wanted to be able to highlight what we're seeing in our community. And, not everything's a violation. Not everything has been, a lot of them have permits. A lot of it is completely in compliance right now, but there are some that we just want to bring to our attention that there's just a lot of confusion on what is allowed and what's not.
Is everything we're seeing here, these would be acceptable into the sign ordinance? No.
Not necessarily. Some are, some aren't.
Okay.
Some have already been addressed. Some of the pictures are older. Some of them are fairly new pictures. It's just a variety of the things we've seen. Not to point anybody out or anything like that. We just wanted to make sure we were providing a clear picture of what we're seeing in our community.
And if we pass the sign ordinance, does that grandfather whatever's there, or will we start enforcing it?
So I think some signs, some of the lighting would be considered temporary. So anything temporary would not necessarily be grandfathered. If it already had a permit and was a legally conforming sign, yes, they would be what we would call grandfathered.
Yes, that would be that would be the most important criteria, is whether it's legally established nonconforming. So if someone is currently operating within the rules and then the rules change, they would be grandfathered. But for any uses around the city that are not currently allowed under the sign ordinance, by us adopting this amendment to the zoning ordinance, the sign ordinance to move it, that would not necessarily bless those presently nonconforming uses.
Okay. Thanks.
So just to confirm, who turned my microphone off? I am the last person that needs a loud microphone. Strip lighting is not currently banned, correct? Currently allowed. True strip lighting.
True strip lighting, so under the old definition, strip lighting is allowed in commercial highway, heavy industrial, some PUDs. Okay. It is not allowed in the gateway.
Isn't that in the gateway, though? Okay, I see I'm picking up what you're putting down, Teresa.
Also, this one is a multi-tenant building. Currently, we wouldn't allow, this was taken during the holiday. It is allowed for holiday
that
lights.
Is holiday lighting.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a multi-tenant building. Under the current sign ordinance, we would not allow strip lighting in a multi-tenant building because one tenant may want it and the next tenant may not, and the next, so then you would have this broken. It's outline lighting currently is not allowed on a multi-tenant, only a single tenant building.
Outline or strip? Or either?
Both.
Interesting.
I think the idea behind it was to be consistent with if you have 10 stores,
sure,
that you're not, it doesn't look broken, it looks consistent, uniform, would be my assumption.
Or that you would have 10 different sets of lighting put up, that they would all change their color, that I get that.
And those are the
That's for
kinds
the-
of things that we will continue to look at as we're
Yeah.
developing this.
Right, right.
Well, and of course, the alternative to that is it could be allowed in the multi-tenant building as long as it is all of one uniform color. So as long
Right.
as all the tenants agree, you could have it be allowed. It's just not having the broken up nature, perhaps.
Teresa, since you deal with this every day, and I mean, I will tell you, you've got one of the hardest jobs in the city because there's a lot of signage that just gets put up that we don't know. So what do you recommend is the best to handle outline and strip lighting? What do you think is the best thing that we could recommend?
I think the process we're in now is really going to be beneficial in the long run to our developers that are coming. I mean, you know, you spend a lot of money on a building and you have this expectation that corporate branding, you know, those kinds of things, and they come up at the end of the process when they come to me for a sign, and I'm like, oh, I noticed that you have this outline lighting on your building. That's not allowed in this zone. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that. So I think this process will help that a lot. We'll still have, you know, people who've been established for 15 or 20 years that want to put up some lighting, and we can deal with those as they come, as long as we have clear guidelines on what is and what's not
So
allowed.
are y'all recommending this needs to go through, as this comes through a site plan process and someone's presenting their architecture, if they've got wash lighting, outline lighting, or strip lighting, that there would be a section on there that they would immediately identify that as it's going through planning commission, you guys could say, okay, here's what they're doing here?
Yes, sir. That's exactly the proposal. And we would also suggest as well that they would include colored architectural renderings showing exactly how the lighting will look at nighttime.
Yeah.
To make it easier for everyone involved, planning commission and council, to see how it's supposed to look.
The only thing I would say to that, I would hope we could be reasonable with that, because if you've got, you know, go back to Sean's favorite coffee shop, the Dutch Brothers on Old Fort Parkway. Dutch Brothers can afford to be able to do architectural renderings.
Right.
If you've got the alley that's got their area there and it's a small business, those architectural renderings are not cheap to do. I mean, maybe now AI can do it for some of the small businesses, but we ought to be a little flexible to make sure we're not causing $5,000 worth of an expense for an architectural rendering for $2,000 lights that a small business is trying to put up.
Well, and that certainly is the give and take. The advantage of the architectural renderings is it's easier for staff to see what it's supposed to look like, and it's easy to enforce in the future. But you're absolutely correct. For a smaller, you know, if it's just a one-off restaurant, someone wants to open up, you know, their own individual restaurant, not a part of a chain, that could be a barrier to entry, which we may not want to impose.
And I think that's one of the reasons we add words like excessive glare, you know, light spillage into other areas. So that's addressed, even though, you know, we're not going to always get in. Even if you have a color rendering, it may not be accurate to the brightness of the light. So.
Any other questions? Looks like it's heading in the right direction.
And Teresa, you're doing an excellent job. I got to know you the sign lady.
Yes, thank you.
Take your son.
Oh, yeah. Good job taking over those signs there.
I know she got yours, Austin. You got about 2,000 at times.
Yeah.
Look, she got a few of mine. And it's the way it is.
But you still grinning all over the city.
What, everybody? I think this is good. I mean, I think the summary slide said that, if you can go to that, is that
At the end?
at the end?
Yes, sir.
I mean, basically, if the intent is to get this as part of the site design, you can start having the conversation earlier, you avoid the confusion down the road.
Right.
With the person that's like, oh, by the way, I want to put up a string of lights and an extension cord from Home Depot.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not a good look for the business or the city.
Right. And also, you know, we don't want the situation that Teresa suggested where you have, you know, a national brand that has very strong branding requirements, gets through the entire process, and then feels like the rug's pulled out from underneath them right at the very end when we say, oh, you can't have your lighting that you do everywhere else. If it's earlier on in the process, we can have those conversations earlier and see if there's a way to work through it.
Yeah. My one general comment would be that as you have projects that come along, I'll use Keystone as an example. As that comes along, assuming that it's still is a go. There's always that risk that something will happen, but let's say they break ground, and then you've got Keystone that's butting up essentially to the historic square. I would hope there's some flexibility to where we know what this is zoned for and what the square is, and it's like, does it make sense in terms of what they're proposing on the lighting?
Right, absolutely. And actually, to your point, on a development like Keystone, most of those are going to be a planned development, and we did have discussions about specifically allowing lighting deviations to be spelled out in a planned development, so that Keystone, if they wanted to have more historic lighting on the square side but more modern lighting elsewhere or something, that could be something they could discuss as part of their planned development process. Because the whole idea, of course, there is to lay out very clearly all of the variations that the developers is given from the normal zoning ordinance. And so that's something that we definitely could address in something like a Keystone, where it is going to be a planned development.
What do you see as, it says different standards for the Gateway and the Central Business District. What do you see as some of those, just one or two of those, what might be different that would?
Sure. Some of the discussions that we've had with staff would be, in the Gateway District, having it be much simpler, just white lights, not having a bunch of colors all over the place would be one possibility. The other thing that we discussed for the Central Business District specifically, which of course is just around the downtown square, would be allowing more of those kind of ambiance type style of lights, both the strip lighting, so the strip lighting along roof lines, for example, having the patio string lighting. If there's a seating area in front of the humidor, for example, the lighting they have there could be permitted in the Central Business District, but we may not necessarily want it in other areas of the city. The idea there is the Central Business District is really we're trying to make it a more inviting, walkable area, and so that those kind of more ambiance type of lights maybe make sense there. Whereas if it's elsewhere in the city, you have the risk of it being kind of a hodgepodge of glaring kind of Las Vegas style lights, which we don't necessarily want. So those were some examples that were discussed, but certainly there are others that we can consider. So,
Will there be like a town meeting or something that you're going to present before we actually define this, or are you going to come up with something? How do we see this
think
proceeding?
This would be up to Darren, but I think it might make sense once we do kind of finalize more of our suggestion for the ordinance amendment. And we are pretty close to it already, but we have a few more discussions to have internally to make sure that we're all on the same page. Once that's finalized, we certainly could bring it back as a workshop item to the council before there's a vote on it, just to make sure that you can see more of the specifics of how we're dealing with it. My goal here was more of a kind of a high level, since we're changing a lot of things, just what you want it to look like, rather than getting into the mechanics of how the ordinance is going to operate. But we certainly could have a workshop where we go through that.
I think I'd like to hear the public's comments as well. I mean, we've got certain opinions, I think, but I'd like to hear the public's response to what we're.
Certainly. Well, and actually one thing that I forgot to mention is with the discussion of the design guidelines, that committee is made up of stakeholders around the city, and this actually was presented to them yesterday. Sure. And so we are trying to get their opinions on it, but more public opinion is better, certainly, because obviously the goal here is to make it better for the public. So, yeah.
Great work.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. All right, let's move to Journey Home update and purchase and sale of city property.
Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. What had initially just been something that I was going to go over with you on a purchase and sale agreement for some excess city property over by Journey Home. We have Mr. Billy Truesdale here, Director of Operations. Thought it'd be a great opportunity since it's been just over a year since they started their client services and accountability framework. And staff had met with several folks from Journey Home, and they had some pretty impressive, metrics or examples of maybe how their culture is changing and maybe just their level of service and what's going on. And wanted to have Billy come up and, or Mr. Truesdale come up and talk to you guys about it a little bit.
Thank you,
Mr. Gore. What a huge honor it is to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about our organization. And by our organization, I mean ours, this community's organization, because we're all in this together. Recently, we were talking about the negotiations in reference to the access property and us being able to acquire it. And Mr. Gore gave me a few minutes to talk about some of the good things we're doing at the Journey Home. And I think I got his attention a little bit with a statistic. Since 2023, the Journey Home has spent over $18,000 reunifying people with their families through Greyhound. That's a pretty big number. Just in 2026, we've spent over, I believe the number $6,500 just in the second quarter doing that, and through our transportation employment program, which also helps people get to medical appointments, get to their jobs, those type of things. There was a handout I believe Mr. Williams put out on your table. I threw some statistics down there, a lot of numbers, and I'm more than welcome to answer any questions at any time. I don't want to take up y'all's time. But on that first page, one of the things I want to talk to you about is down at the bottom where it talks about client support and crisis intervention. This happened yesterday at our office, and this is not uncommon. To this extent, it's uncommon. We had a 75-year-old lady that was brought to town on Monday for a medical appointment. She was dropped off at the doctor's office by a friend, went to her appointment, and they didn't come pick her up. She ended up walking from Walmart on Rutherford Boulevard to our facility, spent the night on the sidewalk in front of our building.
Oh, my goodness.
75 years old. Nowhere to go. Got to talk to her yesterday, pretty neat lady from McMinnville with family in Woodbury that I happen to know from my days in law enforcement over there. And we were able to put her in an Uber and get her home to safety. That's one instance where we do that. Our family reunification program, there's talk through the homeless community that Nashville buses people to Murfreesboro, or we bus people to Nashville, or Cincinnati sends them down here. Our policy at the Journey Home is not to do that. I will not buy you a bus ticket. I will not get you an Uber unless we talk to somebody at that location where we can verify you've got a safe place to be. We won't just send them to the senior center in McMinnville or Nashville. We won't bus you anywhere until we have verifiable information that you're going to be safe and cared for where you go to. We don't put homeless people homeless somewhere else. I'd like to also point down there to the Journey Home statistics in the second set of numbers at the bottom. Hence us trying to acquire these extra lots. If you'll look at the comparison in volunteer hours between second quarter of 2025 and 2026, we've had an increase of over 79% in our volunteer hours. We have over 1,000 dedicated registered volunteers at the Journey Home now. When we built our building, we added 39 parking spots, and that was about 39 not enough. Our parking lot stays filled every day. So I really appreciate, or we really appreciate the city working on us on potentially being able to acquire that property, and we look forward to make it into a beautiful spot over in our neck of the woods. We have tried our best, and I think as a whole, we've done a pretty good job in changing the way we do business at the Journey Home. We're all from Murfreesboro. We know the reputation over on 308 West Castle Street. We've tried to get rid of that reputation, Mr. Mayor. We have firm, fair, consistent rules that are applied with Jesus in our heart. We have a wonderful working relationship with the host unit. They don't come to our place anymore, and I like that. We try and keep the place clean and respectable. We've met with all of our community partners, and we have great relationships. We've had 2 complaints when it was first opened. We dealt with those immediately. We've had no more complaints from neighbors, which is so nice. we're looking at growing outside of Murfreesboro. One of the notes on the second page is we're looking to build 11 permanent supportive housing units out near Walter Hill. We're currently looking to acquire 5 acres of land out there. And in these permanent supportive housing units, it would be for seniors. There's a dire need for senior supportive, permanent supportive housing. In 2025, at the Coldest Night Shelter, which you all are familiar with, 33% of the people that stayed in the shelter were over the age of 55. And like I said, we dealt with a 75-year-old lady yesterday. We just housed last week in one of our houses an 81-year-old lady that was scammed by the Nigerians. She's lost everything she owns, and she was evicted. She had nowhere to go. She has 6 kids that she's estranged from, but we were able to take her in and get her housed. And I'll finish up here with the top numbers of why we built the new Journey Home facility. And the reason we built that facility was for the 10 interim family housing units to support families that are homeless in our community. I apologize for the typo on my family count there, but at the time I did this, there was 10 families that had been housed in the building for over 1,152 bed nights. That's people were actually in beds in our building for a total of 1,152 nights, which is fabulous. This morning, today, we have 7 families in the building and 17 children. And before we left here, and I was running late, I met with another family that we're going to take in this afternoon. We've had a total of 13 families now. This will be our 14th. Of the 10 families that we had in the building, we're still progressing with 7 of them. 3 of them we have housed in our housing. So Scott's vision is working. It's a 4-month program. We're coaching people to employment, helping them get the counseling they need, taking care of their children. I see Mr. Duke's not here, but I had a chance to meet with him. We're working, partnered with the city schools, the county schools, and the program is really working, the interim family housing program. And I just want to say on behalf of our organization, and me personally, I think it is fabulous that we're able to work together on this, where maybe that wasn't the case in the past. We didn't necessarily see eye to eye on things, and that's okay because that's yesterday. I know that we can call Mr. Williams or Mr. McKnight or Mr. Kerr or Mr. Gore, and we can have an open, constructive, collaborative conversation. So that's awesome. If I can answer any questions.
Do you guys have the funds to be able to start on the parking lot project?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have one recommendation. So we've gone 16 months or 18 months since we had the last meeting. They've opened their new facility. They've done everything that they said they were going to do. I'm one vote, but I don't think $180,000 on property that we bought 30 or 40 years ago and had an old fire station is going to make or break the city. If Journey Homes could agree to show how that they're going to use those funds to get this built, I would be a vote to give them the property for $1.
You run an excellent organization. I'm part of a ladies group that comes once a month, and we cook for you and serve the people. And your staff is so professional, and we just really enjoy coming. Excellent.
Thank you.
I'll second that. Was that the motion?
I can't make a motion, but
I'll second it.
I can make the motion.
So we have a motion, a second.
Tears back in your eyes.
Yeah.
Come on.
Emma won't.
So we have a motion, a second, that we will amend the purchase and sale agreement for $1. We're keeping all the clawbacks in, and with the Journey Home showing how they're going to use those proceeds to be able to apply to the project to continue their mission. Please call the roll.
One comment after this, or I can make it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a general comment, when you have that situation with a family and, they need your services, but they've got animals, they've got 2 pets, they don't want to give up the pets. Have y'all thought about something to where, you know, I hate to say, put up some sort of temporary kennel? That way their pets are there, they're there for 20, 30 days. Because sometimes they need you. And, you know, I love my dogs too. They don't want to give up their dogs. You know, that way they could use your services instead of, you know, doggone it, they can't because of that. Have you ever thought about something like that?
I'm sorry, if I could ask you to go back to the mic, just for the no, that's okay, just for the cameras, it's all right.
I'm a little excited.
You're fine, you're fine.
We have, and this is not uncommon. If I can share a quick story.
Yes, sir.
We had a lady last week that came in, a domestic violence victim with 2 children and 2 dachshunds. We do not allow dogs on our property, and there's various reasons. We're concerned about, especially the children on our property. I've had to make choices in my life, hard ones. This mother chose not to stay in our facility, but we offered to reach out. Mr. Maxwell, we'll do anything we can to help people, and we will find resources for them, and we offer them. We just don't have the bandwidth right now to get into the...
I get it.
But yes, sir, it is, and it's near and dear to our heart.
Well, all I would say is there's probably an opportunity, and I know you don't have the bandwidth. Your first and foremost thing is to take care of these folks. You know, they don't want to give up their pets. When that situation occurs, maybe there's people in the community that can say, hey, I'll take those pets, or I'll take that family in with those pets temporarily, you know, for a couple of weeks. And that helps you out, and that helps that family out, too.
And I was amazed by your email, sir. Thank you.
Happy to.
That's what this community is about.
Thanks, Austin. All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the contract for $1. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you both. Appreciate your service.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to item 12. Any questions on, actually, item 12 and 13, May and April dashboard? One of these days, we're going to have just loads of questions.
Question.
Put that into AI next time and have it just generate all sorts of questions. That way Aaron doesn't feel left out.
All right.
I'm fine.
Any board and commission appointments?
No, sir.
All right. Any licensing?
No, sir.
Any statements to be paid?
No, sir.
Any other business from staff?
I do have one item, Mayor, if you would entertain this one item. It's recently come to our attention that, we've been designing the widening of Broad Street. This is Broad Street, really showing a section between Manny Avenue and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. This shows you, if you look at the bottom right, kind of the legend of the right-of-way requirements involved with this stretch of road widening. There's one, the tract that's highlighted in yellow. You can see the photograph of that down in the bottom left-hand corner. That is up for sale currently. That is going to be a total take required with part of this road widening endeavor when we get that going. So staff made me aware of it, that they would like to go ahead and purchase this property, since we are going to need to be doing a total take with the road widening. Would avoid any potential condemnation or eminent domain issues moving forward. But obviously this is something that would need to come to you all. I wasn't prepared to give a formal recommendation, but I did want to at least bring this to your attention. And if you all are okay with it, we would bring something to you for consideration at a different council meeting.
That's where the old wagon wheel.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
We're clear partied in high school.
Anybody have any questions on that?
I'll say this in all seriousness, Darren, that strip along there, you got the wagon wheel, you got the auto parts store next door, then you keep moving up towards Discovery Center, and you've got some car lots and things like that. I would almost encourage the city that as these become available, you should be trying to get all of them because it's an opportunity, if we want more people downtown,
Right.
it's an opportunity for us to have property that, where it could be developed where we do get more people downtown, that's walkable. So just putting that out there, as they come up, I'd grab any and every one of them.
Looking over at Joe and Michelle, and they heard that. So we'll keep our eyes on these as they come open. We will bring them for your consideration.
Okay.
Erin just has to find the money somewhere. I know, she was looking at me. I
What
said,
time you were talking?
I know, I was getting the look. That's it. Just wanted, we'll be bringing this, we'll talk more, because, yeah, I haven't talked to Erin about this yet either, so we'll talk more, and we'll bring this up at some point to you.
Business from staff. Will we be meeting next week?
I do not believe, let me double check my schedule
I didn't
here.
think we were.
His boss, when,
don't think
are
it's
we
on the
meeting next week, Darren? Darren looks at Aaron.
I've got my calendar up here, so I can tell you.
I have us not on the calendar.
I have us not meeting. I have us off on the 16th, and we're meeting again on the 23rd, and then we'll be off the 30th.
Any other questions?
Meeting on-
Any other business from staff?
Yes, we would be meeting on August 6th.
But I'm talking about September, that Labor Day week.
We're not meeting on August 6th. That's election night. We don't need to meet on.
We were on August.
We are.
Yeah, we
It's
are
on the-
meeting.
On the
That's
calendar.
where,
That was
That's
poor planning.
okay.
I won't be there.
I mean, we've got four people
Well,
on the ballot.
We can, well, let's do this. If we don't want to meet August 6th, then we just, August 11th, do we want to make the workshop? I know it was bad. I know. I get it. Do we want to do August 13th? Do we want to do that? That's our workshop. Do we just want to do that as an evening meeting on August 13th?
I think it's a great idea.
Let's do that.
I
All
just,
right. No, I get it.
I don't know that we've ever
Oh,
had.
no, there are, that's the problem. This is the problem.
Oh, my God.
That's where I came in, is the public hearings have been advertised.
Public hearings have been set.
That was the issue, that the public hearings got set.
Possibly move it an hour earlier?
Wait a second.
Do we just,
The advertisement specify the time, so. we would
So
have to-
let's, but
They've not been public. I can pull them still. Darren, Melanie said those advertisements have not been published yet, so.
we
can change that.
Yeah, we really, I don't want to have, again, I chair the meeting, so y'all get it is not a good precedent to have a governmental meeting on election night. We have never done that before. So, because, I mean, what's going to happen, everybody's going to be sitting here at a 6 o'clock meeting, polls close at 7, everybody's going to be looking to see what happens. And so I would rather us move it to the next Thursday. I think that's a great solution. So,
Does that have to be a month?
is that published? I don't see the problem.
I think the legal team is conferring about dates and deadlines.
Yeah, Mr. Blomley informed me, apparently there are 7 public hearings, and while they've not been published, the notices have been mailed out. So we're just conferring as to whether we have a shot clock on any of those within which we have to
Okay.
take
So let's do
action.
this.
So-
Instead of us talking about this at the meeting, let's let y'all figure that out. But it would be highly preferable to have that. We can move our workshop from the day of the 13th and move that to the night of the 13th. But I mean, if we can't, we can't. But that's going to be a tough.
I know that was an oversight.
New. I mean, it's your first election, Darren.
Yeah, I missed, well, it's a big miss, sorry.
Yeah, you've heard
It was a
the
rookie maneuver.
story, right?
Do what?
You've heard the 3-card story,
Yes,
right?
I've heard it. Is the first envelope needs to be open?
First card, you're using the first card, so you can blame Craig.
Gotcha.
When you get to that 3rd card, you remember what you're supposed to do. Prepare 3 cards.
I got to prepare my 3 cards. I know for the next guy.
It's obvious you're not voting for anybody.
Yeah, no.
I got
My
you,
vote,
Darren.
yeah.
And adjourn.